Recording in progress. Everybody, welcome back. Number 63, Roses Rhetoric podcast. Joining me, a not so special guest host.
Sweet
Also,
to hear.
the no less charming, no less Joseph Matz. Joe, good to have you back.
Nice to be back.
For anybody wondering, Joe Stanford is doing well. He is actually traveling today, which is why he is not here. But he is doing well otherwise, and I'm sure we will hear from him next weekend. But Joe,
He's like the global correspondent for the show with all
he
the
really
travel.
is. Yes, no, we're maybe that'll be something that we try to focus on next year. We'll have Joe traveling around. I know that he does want to travel, and I think that would be fun. As you know, he did a lot of traveling in Europe this past year, and that was fun for the show as well. So, yes, maybe that will continue. Joe, as I told you offline, I also am traveling today, so I'm in a bit of a time crunch. But in a change of pace, I prepared the movie review for this week. And of course, it's one of my favorite things to do is to express my views, give as little time for feedback as possible, and then get on with my day, assuming broad agreement with whatever I said. No. So I figured we would dive right into the movie review that I prepared for today. It's luckily a movie that you've seen as well. It's a review of a movie called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this one. This is one I saw just because I was subbing a class sometime in the last year, and this was what they were having their class watch. And it's always nice when I get to watch a movie that's actually pretty good.
Yes. So, well, actually, so that actually comes up in the review because yes, I know exactly the kind of movie that you were afraid you were going to be watching. I don't know why we subject children to bad movies, but we certainly do. But this is not an example of that. So without further ado, yes, let me pull up my review. It's a little bit longer than yours tend to be, but that's okay. We're gonna hop right into this. Okay. Never Pray for Rain. Reflections on the Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Some weeks ago, I challenged our audience to look for films where the plot is resolved without violence. I recently encountered a movie that met this criteria and exceeded all expectations. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind tells the story of William Kamkwamba, a 13-year-old son of a farming family struggling to cultivate food during a drought-caused famine. I stress the word drought-caused as a familiar talking point for those in food politics is to stress the importance of political factors in famines. However, weather and climate continue and will continue to be factors that agriculture contends with. It is here that I will define two broad categories of people: those who pray for rain and those who build pumps. Our story follows William on his journey to build a windmill to power a pump after he comes to realize that a pump will allow his village to extend the farming season into the dry season. He faces struggles of poverty when trying to obtain the knowledge and parts for building his machine, and he faces social opposition as well. His father is skeptical of his claims and at one point condemns such tinkering to toy making. Eventually, his father comes to trust his son, and the windmill is eventually built. The pump is powered, the water flows, and the famine is cured. As I mentioned, this film exceeded all expectations. Upon viewing the trailer, I prepared myself for a feel-good movie of teamwork montages, the kind of movie a teacher plays to grade school children when they, the teachers, are too hungover to attempt the day's lesson. That is absolutely not what the audience should expect. This film packs a punch. There are several serious moral dilemmas the characters face. Furthermore, this film captures the terrifying reality of human beings becoming the masses through lack of food, only to have their humanity restored through an abundance made possible by the purposeful application of physical law. Diving into the ins and outs of cinematography, acting, setting, etc., would fail to do this movie justice. The true weight of the movie rests entirely on the audience understanding what is happening without being misled into seeing a lesser story where a great one is being told. You must understand the significance of the moment William decides to master the forces of nature to guide the destiny of his village. You cannot think. This is more boys being clever trope chasing in the vein of Tony Stark. The story being told here is not about a boy being clever, no doubt. Countless members of the boys' village had been clever before. The story here is about our orientation towards the future. The future can be radically different from the present if one is willing to subject their worldview to conjecture and criticism. William was, and the village is better off for it. A quick but important side note, as a film, this movie delivers on all but one front. A mother is shown striking her child for being disrespectful. This act of violence is not shown in the film to be wrong. This is in clear contrast to other scenes of violence that are obviously condemned. For this viewer, this is no small detail. Violence against children is violence against children. It is always wrong and should never be tolerated. Had it not been included in the movie, I would be tempted to grant it the coveted title of a perfect movie, but alas, I cannot. Despite this, I must wholeheartedly recommend the movie. As mentioned earlier, it is a perfect example of a movie where the hero doesn't achieve victory by killing a bad guy. In fact, this movie does an incredible job of showing violence for what it almost always is, the absence of civil society. The title of this essay comes from a conversation between the mother and a school administrator. In the course of the conversation, the mother mentions that her people are a modern people. They have abandoned the old ways. They no longer pray for rain. She is expressing a frustration that this village that had adopted modern customs still suffered. And this is a point worth dwelling on. Praying for rain did not bring rain, but not praying for rain didn't bring it either. At its best, religion is an invitation to participate in a life pursuing objective values. At its worst, religion serves as a repository for unexplained phenomena. The cultural problem facing the village was their perspective towards the future. What William represents is a culture of determinism. He understood that by discovering and then applying knowledge, there were parts of the world he could control. Life did not have to be a collection of mysterious forces where people relied on magic to control said forces in unexplainable ways. No doubt, countless examples of this type of thinking in our Western culture come to mind. This is not a good relationship to have with reality. And Williams' comprehension of this in the movie sets him apart from those around him. It was this quality that made him a great hero and a true inspiration for our times. To William, Godspeed.
All right, I liked it.
Very good. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us today. We'll be signing off. Yeah. So really, I thought a wonderful movie and available on Netflix, probably other places as well, I'm sure, but it's on Netflix if you have an account. Definitely watch it over winter break if you have a chance to.
Yeah, this is definitely one to recommend. Now it does have one everybody works together montage, to be fair.
That's true, but only one. Only one, and it certainly earned its PG-13 rating. I mean, in other words, there were parts of it that were, adult themed, if you will. I mean, nothing overly gratuitous.
Yeah, because if I'm remembering right, the moment you mentioned where the mother strikes a child, that she hits the daughter, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Right. Slaps her in the face. It's not like but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which I can kind of understand. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays the father in this. This was the first movie he's ever directed. He wrote and directed it.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand kind of why he wouldn't want to like overly harshly judge these people in this situation for how they acted there.
Oh, sure.
But not to say I disagree with you that hitting children is bad.
Yeah,
definitely on that side.
Yes,
but I mean, I reread the plot summary of this before we came on today just to make sure I wasn't forgetting anything. And I was like, oh yeah, there's some tough moments in this film where.
Well, absolutely, and there's actually a lot of interesting themes that come up in this movie as well. And one of them is the orientation of the family towards education. that this family that's very poor and suffering makes an effort not to just educate their son, but to also educate their daughter, which I would have to imagine is even less common in their village. I would have to assume
Right.
that.
And then we really see the obstacles of it too, just because he's not allowed to, go to school for a while there because they can't afford it. And then obviously, it's not an insane amount of money, but just for them it is. So even though they have that want and that drive, especially he has that drive to learn, there's still that added obstacle of just they don't have the money. And obviously the school can't run unless they have money. So it just kind of shows how systemic those problems can be.
Absolutely, and it's always interesting when you see. So one of the things I liked about this movie I didn't cover in the review, but the fact that the school is shown as a place where the kids actually want to be in. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to imagine that this is a thing where like an American watches like, oh, this is all horseshit. It's like, well, it actually is not, because these kids realize once you are lucky enough to go there, this is a ticket out of poverty for some of them. But even to a greater degree, we see that school isn't even just about some stepping stone in a long list of stepping stones, but actually the things that you are learning can be immediately applicable. William, well, William actually understands like, hey, this isn't just an equation that works on a test. I can actually build the machine that will do this.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just some random fact. And so,
right. It's not something where it's like, well, eventually I'll use this to get into college. And then from there,
right.
it's like, yeah, no, immediately in his life, this literally saves the village.
Yes. And for people who don't know, this is, and I said this in a review, but this not only is this based on a true story, but it's a story that is, and what kind of the movie makes it clear that it's still that's just still playing out. That the village now has more than just that one windmill. William went on to get degrees from, at least one degree from Dartmouth, and maybe he's gotten more since then. But so his life, he's young. I don't know quite how old he is. Probably around our age. He's not.
Oh yeah, he's I believe he's 34 now.
Yeah, so his story is still unfolding. His impact on the village is still unfolding. But really a clear example of using knowledge to overcome something in a very immediate and particular way. In the movie, William comes to understand that he needs this particular electronic component to make his whole design work. And what I really liked about that is it shows that kind of his thinking from a design point of view was to identify a very specific problem and then work to address that specific problem, which is really a great model for thinking in general. It's
sure,
how do you build a bridge? Oh, some general thing. It's like, no. You put a brick right fucking there. And then you put another one right fucking, and then that's how you build. And so he understood that, like, oh, to build the windmill, I need that fucking dynamo. I don't need some general thing, but no, I need that fucking thing right there. Which was really nice too, that it actually showed, a thought process that was relatable to real life. It wasn't, Tony Stark making a new element in his fucking garage wearing a tank top or some weird fucking. It's like, no, it's actually really what it fucking was. I mean, to me, it was a great film for that reason as well.
Right, and he also we see him struggle to get everything he needs. Where, the big obstacle in the end, and they need to destroy the family bicycle,
right?
Which is very important to the family. It's kind of like their way to get around quicker to certain places. And his dad is skeptical. And obviously, again, you mentioned, the family is supportive of them going to school, but his dad's also a practical guy who's kind of like, I don't know that this thing you want to do is going to work. I can't sacrifice stuff to make that happen. So I think that conflict is really well handled, where you understand why the dad feels that way. He's not like just some super unreasonable guy.
No, he and he's doing what he knows, which is, hey, till the land, plant the crop, hope for the best. I mean, what else can you do? And certainly the main struggle in the movie is ideological. Ultimately, it's not it's about William convincing people in his life that we can actually do something different, and facing that resistance and eventually overcoming it is. I mean, to me, this is a nice metaphor for how I view progress in general. I mean, that's basically why I like the movie so much. And the character of William, to me, embodies so many qualities that are important today. And the fact that it's a true story makes it even more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like the movie earns everything that it does. I think, like I said, I think it does a good job of showing the reality of what they're going through, why it's so difficult for the village, for the family, for him to ultimately build this windmill. And yeah, it just gains even more power when you're like, oh yeah, this all, this is a movie where I'm sure, every movie that's adapted from a true story, it's like, is everything 100% accurate? Probably not. But this is one where you're like, I feel like this is like 90-95%. This is what happened.
Well, what was interesting is they actually showed in the end credits, they show the windmill that he built. I mean, it looks
right. It looks
exactly like the one that they showed in the movie. Like maybe they actually just even like shot it on site. I actually don't know much about the production of it. I mean, maybe they did do that, but certainly, the perseverance of a young child in the face of all of these obstacles is to me that's the heroic character right there. The perseverance, the understanding of what you're doing, the willing to challenge norms, that embodies the hero much better than swinging a sword, swinging a hammer. It's, I think, a more realistic approach of being a hero, and one that is actually accessible to all of us. None of us are going to become Thor, even if we really want to be. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's true. But all of us could become a William, basically. So, it's also more approachable from that point of view as well. I'm curious to know what your students thought of it when they watched it in the class.
As I remembered it, I feel like everyone did, for the most part, like it. They seem to be paying attention to it, which is always just one of the biggest obstacles sometimes. If I'm remembering right, it was a sixth grade class. And you brought up how the kids in the movie all are like really invested in their schooling. I remember we did touch on that a little bit, because obviously, as anyone who's been to school in America knows, not everyone there is super hyped to be there and be learning or not learning. Right. But so we discussed that, and how the lack of automatic schooling there changes that dynamic, where people who want to learn then are obviously super motivated. Where here, it can be taken for granted, obviously.
I mean, do you think part of that, I mean, obviously we don't want a famine in the United States, but I do sometimes think that there is a distance between schooling and, what I would call application, by which I just mean that things are learned, but it's always very abstract. I mean, we have labs in some classes, but it's hard sometimes. Well, when am I going to use this? When am I going to use this piece of knowledge? And, to me, the response teachers should give students when they're asked that question is always a matter of, why don't you find a way to apply it? I mean, isn't that the better question? Like, not, right, will I use this, but rather, how can I use this? That should be the question that people are asking themselves. And it's a question that William asked himself when he took his hobby of electronics and realized, hey, I can make this pump work. But, I think so much knowledge is obtained just for trying to get through the next phase that we're never stopping to say, like, no, actually, what is actually true and can be used right away, if you think about how to do it.
Right. I do think that is a general thing that teachers should always be trying to do, is relate whatever you're covering as much as you can to people's real lives. Well, with English, obviously that can just be like reading things that are applicable to people's real lives, so they have a keener interest in what they're reading. Like you said, in science, obviously not everyone's going to go out there and build a windmill, but like even minor things that you can show your kids, like, oh, you can do this. I think that does build excitement and more interest in what you're learning. As far as a background of the movie, I don't know where exactly it was filmed, but England, actually, this was their submission for Best International Feature that year for the Academy Awards. It did not get nominated, but this was a well-regarded enough movie where they thought it was worthwhile to
submit. But what, I want to know what beat it that year.
Let me see if I can look that up.
If it's a movie with Daniel Day-Lewis, and I'm going to shoot my head off my shoulders.
Well, Parasite's the movie that won that year, so I'm trying to find the other.
I like Parasite. That was a good one.
I mean, yeah, Parasite won everything, so it's hard to.
That was a good movie. That was the Korean one, right?
Yeah.
Where they go, yeah, that was a good movie. All right, well then I'm not going to fault them for that. That's fine. That's fine.
Let's see. I have not seen any of the other ones. I know. Let's see. Pain and Glory was Spanish. Pedro Almodovar. I'm mispronouncing his name, but he's a famous director, so not surprising there. Apparently, another remake of Les Mis got nominated, so you could be angry about that one probably. Honeyland from North Macedonia, which there you go. And if you didn't know, North Macedonia, that is a country. And Corpus Christi from Poland. So I don't know anything about those movies, but
All right. So Parasite 1, which is I won't fault it. That was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I would say this movie was better in terms of like actually having a positive outlook on life and not to become, basically parasites, which is what the movie is about. And holding herself to a very low bar. And then, really, the movie doesn't glorify that. Like the ending of the movie is them literally floating around in shit as their apartment floods. Right? If I remember that right?
That's not the end of the movie, but that does indeed happen.
Yeah, it's in there. So yeah, that was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I think the Boy Harness the One is more uplifting and inspiring. But
I don't think there's much question about that.
I mean, goodness gracious.
You will feel better about the world after watching this than you will Parasite for sure. This movie does bring up stuff that we've discussed a little bit on the pod and definitely off the pod, which is just the importance of access to education, and again the ability to go, because again he had a school and he couldn't go all the time because of money. So obviously it gets more complicated when you talk about like aid to other countries, stuff like that. But just access to education remains one of the most important things in the world, because surely there are other
for us to believe in America because no one wants to be in a school. No one cares about it.
Yeah, there are other Williams out there in the world who don't ever get to harness their potential or the wind.
Nice.
And that's because they don't have access. They don't have access to education, or they don't have the money. So, this remains, I think, there's still so much untapped potential in humankind because of that.
I completely agree with that. And, it's harder for us, maybe, and this probably shouldn't only, but it's very easy to see how William learning about electronics allowed him to make a pump that then had a very immediate impact on his village in terms of wealth. It basically allowed them to make more food. What would be nice for us as Americans to realize is to make that connection. Do we understand that by us going to school, we learn things that allow us to do things that allow us to create value? And I think for people that are in education, stressing that point as best as you possibly can. I would, as someone on the outside, I'm not a teacher, I don't pretend to be, but I think explaining to kids that really is the end of the game right there. I mean, if we can create wealth and abundance, that moves us so far along curing the world's ails, that it's a thing that we should all be invested in. And when you're young, the role you have in that challenge is educating yourself so when you become an adult, you can contribute to that process. That would be, the whole picture, I guess, as I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, again, educating yourself, it helps the collective. It helps you individually.
Right.
There aren't really
in fact, it helps you by helping other people, by making yourself valuable. It's a win-win. I mean, that really is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no downside to being educated. So it would be nice if more people, here cared about it. And then, again, just with the world, we, however we figure it out, obviously there are people who study this stuff and they know more about how we accomplish these goals. But I think this, just again, education worldwide remains one of the best goals anyone can have. There's no real downside to it. Like, we all benefit from having more educated people.
And I like in David Deutsch's Beginning of Infinity, he gives a really good definition of wealth. I won't remember it verbatim, but it's something like the sum total combination of knowledge and materials you have access to that allows you to transform that material in a way that you find desirable. And a part of that obviously is natural resources, but the bigger part, the far more important part, is the knowledge of how to make those transformations take place. And that's what William did. I mean, he finds a lot of these parts in a junkyard. He actually, the material was actually there. What the material needed was a mind to assemble it in a way that performed a purpose. And knowledge gave William that ability to do that. So I think, really this movie, and I was watching it, really tied in very well, I thought, with David Deutsch's book on the beginning of Infinity. And for that reason, it was fun to watch it and see it, kind of take off in those different parts, and then to see the different antagonists in the film, basically be the antagonist, quote unquote, kind of antagonist in David Deutsch's work as well. So it was a nice tie-in for all those things. And yeah, that there's a true story makes it even better. But yeah, that was my review for this week, Joe. I guess I'll give it a score of, I don't know, A+, 5 out of 5, to counteract the negativity you always bring on our channel with your ridiculous grading
I
system.
give out a lot of B's, yeah, it's not negative.
We're going to go back and revisit all of our films on a curve. No, I think this movie for me really was, it would be hard for me to find parts of it that I didn't like, and that it really never even felt cheesy, which I thought was surprising. I thought that it would, but it really never did, because there was always a weight of, you see a lot of death in the movie. I mean, like, you really see it, the famine take place in his death toll, and it's obviously, there's always a weight to what's happening in the film in the background, which makes it.
I guess just a warning for people, because this always seems to bother people a lot. The dog dies. So
the dog does die. You're right. In fact, I saw it. I thought, no way. Sure enough, gone.
Yeah, like it's depressing at points, but he gets through it. He perseveres.
Yeah, you see that die. You see, I mean, to me, that's always this transformation of people when we act in just like complete mob mentality, horde mentality, which all of us would do if we were suffering. I mean, I hope we all realize,
or at least much more of us. It becomes much easier to get pulled into that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So don't think you're above that. And definitely you are not. I mean, a wake up call for that as well, because really, if we don't pursue these kind of wealth agendas through education, through et cetera, we are setting ourselves up not for stagnation. That would be a bad outcome, but that wouldn't even be it, because eventually something bad will happen that we're not prepared to deal with. And then we won't be stagnating, we will be declining. That is what will happen. So there is no option of just like, oh, we'll just keep the middle. No. The middle will not hold. It will fail, because it will meet a challenge it has not prepared itself for. And after that happens, you'll be in a state of decline. So the only path is to improve and to grow and to become prosperous. And we do that through following the example of William in real life and in the movie, of pursuing a knowledge-based path.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned with Deutsch's discussion of wealth, I mean, I think truly our greatest natural resource is just humanity, and not in like a matrix, humans can be batteries away, or just like people can be delivery drivers. I'm talking, the human mind.
Absolutely.
We've got over 7 billion people, and again, a lot of them still don't have good access to education. So you add those people in, and I don't even know what the limits are, because
infinity,
I probably can't fathom them. Yeah.
Why would it ever stop? This is again, and that point about stagnating earlier, that's not my idea, but that's, people talk about, David Deutsch and other people, they talk about stagnating really isn't even a long-term path, because eventually you encounter something different. But the opposite's also true. If we're always learning and applying our knowledge, why would progress ever stop? Why would it ever cease to exist? This is why it's called the beginning of infinity. It goes on forever. Sure. So I don't think it ever stops, as long as we understand that we can actually make that choice of getting on that train, getting on that path. And my hope, and I know William in this, I think gives speeches and talks, and shares his story, which is wonderful. And my hope is that people don't just see this as, oh, that guy did something clever.
Yeah.
Don't see that. This isn't a boy being clever. This is much more than that. It's much more than that. It's a cultural shift. It's a philosophical shift that is infinitely more important than the application of William 1 technology, is the idea of using technology for progress in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that is key. And William brought that to his village. And in my mind, that is what makes him a hero.
And for people who are interested, this was actually based on his memoir of the same name. So
Yep.
there's also a book out there that people can read, which I'm sure is also extremely inspiring.
And so Joe, you always give other movies to watch
Oh
at the end of your thing, right? So I'll give a
man.
couple. Let me think of here. For movies about people using technology to overcome the forces of nature, Castaway,
Okay.
as
I
I've
like
as
that.
I've
I like
recommended
that.
that movie before. Um, for see other ones. Well, I was going to say, so the father in the movie, who's also the director and the writer, is also in a movie called 2012, um, which is also
2012.
which is
What a
also
turn this took. What a turn.
yeah, which is also a movie about people using technology to overcome the odds. Not based on a true story, although not yet.
Not yet. We might have just been a few years off. We'll see.
Um, what other movies could I recommend on this category? No, that would probably be it. It was really great. Definitely watch it and recommend it to a friend. Really a good movie for the holiday season, actually. And yes, the memoir, which I haven't read, but I'm thinking about reading it. And and I will say this. I will say this before we wrap up. The book that he reads on electronics and on energy generation, on wind generation. He builds a windmill that powers the pump. That's really where the name of the movie comes from. The
Yeah.
windmill that powers a battery that then powers the electronic pump. He read a book called, damn it, I don't remember it. Wait, it's on the Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Using Energy.
Using Energy. That is a real book. Using Energy is a real book. And you can buy it online. In fact, it's on Amazon, and it is actually, I don't know if it's any longer in print, but the prices that I saw on Amazon were expensive. So, but it is a real book. It is a real book. So if you're ever perusing a used bookstore, maybe look for it. But yeah, Using Energy. It's a real book, and it's the book that he actually read. That I'm sure he read multiple books on the subject, but it was one of the books that inspired him for building the windmill that
Yeah.
he used for batteries. So, or for powering the pump. So, yeah. Anyways, Joe, that's what I have for you this week. Any feedback on the review itself? Hopefully, you enjoyed it.
I mean, obviously, you took yours in a different direction than I tend to take mine, which I think makes a lot of sense based on what we each like to talk about.
A positive direction. Look for the good.
This was our most. I think we've only had 2 A+, and mine was very early on. And when I was just like, I think I was on vacation. And I was like, I need a movie.
What was your A+? What was the movie?
That was a Short-Term 12.
I didn't see that one. What is that one? Read the review again. No, I'm kidding.
That one's just, it's about a short-term group home and the people who are helping the kids there.
Oh, I kind of remember that.
I believe is also streaming somewhere. Another good one actually for the holidays.
Was that the one that your brother liked?
Yeah, Sam also loves it. Another movie where it gets really dark but optimistic in the end.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'm excited to see what movie we have from you next time, because it's holiday season. We're gonna have some good movies coming out. I'm gonna see the Matrix.
I saw like 3 movies in the last week, so I'm ready to.
All right, good.
Prep here.
All right, everybody. Well, Joe, as promised, I have to take off. I'm off to catch a flight. I actually will probably be seeing you in a few days in our. Did I get that right? Are we not going to be crossing paths at some point?
Yeah, we will both be in Tucson in what, like 3 days.
Our beloved hometown of sorts. So
right.
Very good, everybody. Well, you know where to follow Jo Matz. He's does the fantasy football on Spotify. He's on Twitter. Joe Joe another E, 2 E's. Matz. Not a great name. We'll work on that one later. No, okay. And
my middle initial. I liked it. It all ran together there.
Follow us as well at Roses_Rhetoric, Twitter, Instagram. Follow Joe at Jose4_, Twitter and Instagram. Our website, www.rosesandrhetoric.com. Until next time, I'm Jimmy Hackett signing off for Jo Matz, saying ciao.